think one of the biggest risks to civilization is the low birth rate and the rapidly declining birth rate.
Should we limit the world's population to save the planet?
He said the couple plans to have only one more child out of concern for the environment.
The worst thing that we can do to this planet is add more people, and so they're not going to do that.
The biggest problem the world will face in 20 years is population collapse.
Why is it that American couples don't want to have kids?
Birth rates in the USA have dropped to their lowest annual levels in 3 decades.
I mean, the population's going to have to stop growing at some point, so why not stop now?
I can't emphasize this enough. There are not enough people.
15,000 scientists signed a petition calling for measures to help limit the world's population.
History is truly at a turning point.
Welcome to Watchmen Review. I'm your host, Ivan, and today we are going to put to death the myth of overpopulation. By the end of this video, you will realize that the truth today is, well, alarmingly quite the opposite. All I can say, folks, is it's time for the world to start having babies, if they can.
You think the problem is parking. You think the problem is garbage. You think the problem is healthcare. No. The problem is population. There is no other problem.
These things we talk about wouldn't be a problem if there was the size of population that there was 500 years ago.
More than 11,000 scientists signed a petition calling for population control as a means of combating climate change.
This is the narrative that has been pushed on us for decades. Now granted, when we look at a chart of human population growth over history, it's evident that there are more humans on Earth today than ever before. Remember a moment ago when Jane Goodall said this at the World Economic Forum?
All these things we talk about wouldn't be a problem if there was the size of population that there was 500 years ago.
500 years ago would have been 1500 AD. That would put our population probably a little less than 500 million. Does that number sound familiar? It should. And notice the timestamp of when the Georgia Guidestones were destroyed. Coincidence? And now the United Nations is warning that the world population is projected to reach 10.4 billion by 2100. But are they telling the whole truth? See what you think.
This is the World Bank's data website, specifically fertility rate, which is defined as the average number of children born to each woman over her lifetime. The world's fertility rate is falling and has been for a long time. In the 1960s, it peaked at around 5.3 and most recently sits at around 2.3 in 2020. On average, ladies have been having fewer babies. According to the OECD, the replacement fertility rate is roughly 2.1 children per woman, which is where the population exactly replaces itself from one generation to the next. That is, without migration. Rates greater than 2.1 result in population growth, whereas rates lower than 2.1, so-called sub-replacement fertility, result in eventual population decline.
Now, while some countries such as sub-Saharan Africa, especially Niger, are experiencing higher population growth, this is not true for the rest of the world.
At a time when the world is watching China's pandemic losses, the country has announced its first population decline in decades. Here's the latest.
The National Bureau of Statistics reported Tuesday that the country had 850,000 fewer people at the end of 2022 than the previous year. That left a total of just over 1.4 billion people with 9.5 million births against 10.4 million deaths.
Already in the Arab Gulf states, it is dropping, with the Gulf Cooperation Group averaging a fertility rate of only 1.84. Saudi Arabia is at 1.67. Kuwait 1.42, and the UAR is at 1.31.
one day, this may be hard to hear. Sperm counts across the world have plummeted by 62% since 1973.
Now, while I would love to discuss the reasons for these trends, I do not want this video to be labeled conspiracy or to be flagged. Let's just say, do a little research and you too can quickly find out what they've done to our food, water, and air, not to mention what's in the pinchy. Folks, whatever the future holds, just know this: the biblical latter days are here. It's time to pick a side.
Oh, well, I've thought for at least 10 years that the biggest problem in 50 years will be that there's just not enough people.